Hello everyone. So welcome to episode 22, season 3 of Teh Tarik with Walid. And today, while we wait for the guest to come on, we will be talking about cancel culture because that is really a thing. It's done at this particular timing because this particular topic is most relevant, I think, for people who are awake at this time of the day or night. And of course, the timings for the Insta Live tonight, at least it is uh, located or planned around the Euro timings because at 12 a.m. we have the match, which is every football fan's dream: Austria versus North Macedonia. I'm sure a lot of you want to catch that match. So we'll have this hopefully a bit more light-hearted session for I would say, quite a serious topic, right? Well, serious enough for the two of us anyway, for my guest today and myself. So today we will have Miss Anngee Neo, and she is, for those of you who do not know her, she is an illustrator, and she actually has two podcasts. Or if you ask her, she would say just the two, the false humility. And one of them is particularly interesting. It's called the Unlocking Podcast, where she interviews members of the old left for of Singapore from the 50s to 70s, and she will tell you guys more about that. Yes, I know, Megan, you didn't come here for football updates, but it's a package deal. Okay, so you want to listen to the content, you have to hear about the football updates from time to time. So okay, so Angie, you can send me a request. You can send me a request to join, and we shall get started. And it's not Megan, it's not the 700 live viewers that we recently got, which is not a bad thing. So the comment section today will be a bit more bearable, hopefully. Hi, Angie.
Hi,
Can you
hi.
hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you
Okay.
hear me?
Hello. Hi.
Everything
Yeah,
clear?
yeah. Very,
Hi.
very well. Very well. Yeah. So,
Awesome.
firstly, maybe you can introduce yourself to the audience. Yes.
Hi, I'm Angie and I am an illustrator for the most part. I'm also a podcaster. I'm part of the Longkang Kitties, which is a incredibly coffee shop talk kind of podcast where we talk about politics and current affairs. And then I also have another one called the Unlocking Podcast. This is where I interview old people who lived through, Singapore's independence, the days of Operation Cold Store, get their stories, and then bring it to a whole new generation, I guess. And
So
yeah,
people who were arrested during Operation Cold Store as well.
yeah, some
Most
of
of
them,
this.
not all of them, some of them.
Okay.
And we are trying to get like also the stories of people around adjacent to this area. So I think like in one of our seasons, I'm hoping to get people to talk about the story of Nanta, like how it closed down,
Right.
etc. But that's like far in the future.
Right. Right. So how many episodes have you done so far?
Uh, how many episodes? In season one, it was like I think 8 or 9. But
Okay.
because within each episode, it's broken up into many like tiny 20, 30 minute segments. So
Okay.
like all in all, it's about 40 to 50, I think.
Okay. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive. So I think this will be an extremely valuable resource for historians, especially in the next few years when they are. I think there's a lot of murkiness when it comes to that period in Singapore history. Shall
Yes.
we say? Yes.
Shall we say?
Shall we say?
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, yeah. So murkiness. All right. So,
Yeah, yeah.
so Angie, why this topic? Why cancel culture?
Why this topic? I think it's important to talk about it because so far a lot of the discussion has been like either or, and when I talk to my friends, people who are on the right of me, they tend to say like, oh, you guys are just too sensitive, right? And cancel culture is stupid. We won't be able to say anything anymore. Nothing is funny. And then like for the people who are left of me, they tend to say like cancel culture doesn't exist. It's consequence culture, and I think it's important to kind of talk about like how it's impacting society, because I do
Okay.
see I do like I think we've observed it more in the US, but I think here as
It's
well
coming
we're
here.
starting to a little bit maybe.
Okay. So, you identify yourself as somebody on the left or right or in the middle
Human.
or what?
uh,
That's a bit unfair, right? Because you characterize others as right or left, right?
yeah,
Or to
so
the
I
right
think
or left. Yeah,
I
yeah.
am quite liberal,
Okay.
but I'm not super liberal. I think that's how
Okay.
I would characterize
Center
myself.
left-ish.
Yes, probably.
Okay. All right. All right. Okay. So the first question maybe I have, and we can go back and forth, and for
Yeah,
our
sure.
younger audience, I mean,
Mhm.
Anngee and I, we are about the same age, right?
You're a
Twenty
bit younger than me,
six,
right?
twenty
You're
six
you're
plus
like
minus, right?
you're
Yeah, yeah, plus
26 and I'm like
minus.
34. So I'm a bit older.
Plus minus, right? Minus holidays and
Yeah.
all of that. So you, how would you define cancel culture? And is it a reality or a myth for you personally? You think?
I would define cancel culture as the entire, I guess, spectacle leading up to someone getting canceled. So, for example, someone made a statement that was problematic or an action that was problematic, and then someone calls it out. And then usually what happens is that there will be an entire social media thing where lots of strangers, complete strangers, would descend upon the person being called out, and then sometimes their friends or the business partners get harassed as well, so that they lose business opportunities or they lose their jobs, and then the person gets cancelled or they don't get cancelled, depending on how you define cancelled. Yeah,
Right,
I
right.
think
Okay.
that's what
So,
I would define it as.
okay. So,
How would you
at
define it?
okay. Oh, I didn't know we are doing. We are both interviewing each other.
Oh, it's good to know if you're on the same page.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, okay. So before I define, so I think it's largely the same. Although I would say, would you say at the very first step, the calling out part, that is already part of cancel culture?
I think you have to call out somebody and have it recognized as problematic before it can, the rest of it can continue, I guess.
Okay. All
So
right. All right.
yeah, I wouldn't call that canceling,
Right.
but
Right. Right.
it
Okay.
can lead
Right.
to canceling.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So then I think our definitions are pretty much the same. So for me, it would be an effort to basically pull that person away from the public eye, right? And usually it happens to a celebrity or a politician, a powerful person, right? So before we get to the benefits of cancel culture, so Z talked about calling in versus calling out. So I do I do take that. I do take that. By the way, feel free to comment, and then we'll respond to the
Yeah, yeah,
comments as
yeah.
we go, as long as they are relevant to this topic, right? So, calling in versus calling out, right? I mean, first of all, I don't think calling out is a bad thing, right? Sometimes you need to
For
call
sure.
people out. You need to call people out. I think at times you can call people in, especially if the harms of an action are public, right? Then it cannot be that the remedy is private, right? The remedy can be public as well, right? So I
For sure.
think I think there are times where you need to call people in, and there are times where you need to call people out, and I think we can get to when those times are. But how would you classify Ivan Lim? That entire incident for those of you who have
um,
forgotten, Ivan Lim was a PAP candidate. The PAP
yeah, the
candidate who
one that
was
happened.
withdrawn eventually. Yeah, yeah, in Jurong JRC, who would have gotten elected anyway, right? Even if he contested, right? I mean, you
I
and I
think
would have been elected,
Tharman.
right? Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah. You and I.
Tharman would have like swept him in easy.
Yeah, yeah,
Like it
yeah. I
wouldn't
mean,
have been a
yeah,
problem.
it wouldn't have been a problem. I mean, any random five of us or four of us in this live chat, if we are standing alongside someone, we would be elected also. So would you say that is cancel culture in action?
I would say yes, because it was from the ground up, right? Because like there were people who stood up and then said, "Hey, this happened and that happened," and then gave examples of his problematic behaviors in the past, and which leads to the questioning of whether or not he is capable of empathy for his residents, etc., etc. Although like he didn't really get cancelled because the PAP didn't say, "Hey, we are not gonna feel this guy." He resigned, right?
Oh, so you don't think he was cancelled? I mean, the fact that
I
he wasn't fielded, even though
I
he was
think
supposed to be.
I think if he decided to go ahead with it, he could still get elected. So I think that's the difference. Um,
Mm.
yeah,
But he
if it
didn't,
makes
right?
sense.
So,
But he
so he
didn't.
didn't,
So yeah, I
right?
guess we could say that he was cancelled.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Z is talking about how he appeared in a GRC video
Yes.
post-election. I mean, that has to be, one of the strangest decisions of many that the PAP has made in the past.
I want
I'm
to know
okay.
who made that decision, though.
Right.
Like
Right. Okay.
who?
I'm sure Taman was involved in the decision, right? Right. I'm
Right.
sure he
Right.
he has to be he has to be involved in that decision, right? So I mean, let's explore this because there are a lot of comments here, right? So I think Mir said he got off lightly, and
Well, he said
Z.
that his family was affected, though.
I mean, for sure, his family would be affected, right? For sure. I mean, and
Sure.
I don't think
Yeah.
that is a lie or anything. I think his family
Yeah.
would be affected, but that also sort of comes with the territory. It comes
Yes.
with the
And I think
territory of being a politician.
I thought it was really funny how he had to use his family as a shield.
Mm.
This is my opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah, right. Yeah. So, okay. So, I guess when Amir and Z, and I'm gonna uh, say the unpopular opinion today, perhaps, right? Did he really get off lightly? Okay, what was his mistake? What was Ivan Lim's crime or mistake?
Well, to me, I think his mistake was of not being a nice enough person if he wanted to
Okay,
get into politics.
all right. Okay, so the mistake is that he's a douchebag. I mean,
Yes.
is
Well,
he
if you
the
can,
first
if it,
douchebag
are
in
we allowing,
politics? Or
are we allowing this sort of language here? If we are, I could say a lot more.
carry on. Yeah. Okay, so the mistake is that what he's a douche.
Yeah,
And is that
he's like an asshole, basically,
oh,
right? He
okay.
was just
Yeah, I didn't expect you to go that.
we
Okay,
are
I
in
mean
the same area
it's
already, I
11
think.
p.m. My son is inside, so it's
Oh
fine.
no!
So
Oops.
it's fine.
He'll learn.
So
It's a biological part.
okay, so why would that be disqualifying? Or what would be an appropriate punishment? I
No,
guess this
I
is what I wanted to say. I wanted to ask people who are saying, and yourself as well, who said he got off lightly. What would be an appropriate punishment for somebody for not being a nice person?
I think this is not what I want, but I think the public would really appreciate if he got out like two durians, put it on the ground, and knelt on it and apologized to everybody that he was
You
for
really,
being
you
such
really
a
think that was,
douchebag.
you really
I think
think
this is
that
what
that would have, as if we need to go like all out against.
I think it would have been very satisfying for like the voting public, because
But
you
why?
do
He didn't do anything to us, right?
no, but like I think he is the representation of all the frustrations that we have with the system, which is
Ah,
like
right,
the
right, right, right.
elites, they treat the regular folk really badly and then they get off with it. And then, like there's just no repercussions
Right.
for any bad
Yeah.
behavior. And they get
Right.
to the point where they can earn 16K a month or
Right.
plus minus, and
Yeah.
on top of their other salary. I think that's why people are so angry. It's
Okay.
not just him.
Right. So that's an excellent point, right? So maybe we can explore that a little further, right? So he basically embodied what was wrong, right?
Yeah.
What was wrong for a lot of people, what they feel is wrong about politics, right? Elitism, and how there are different standards for different people, and somehow people get away with arrogance and so on and so forth, right? So would our frustrations at the system, would it be just for it to be crystallized in the cancelling of one individual?
Yes. So like I think this is a really, really great point because I think very often, for the most part, like a lot of the outrage in proportion to the crime done, it seems like really unjustified. Uh, I think it's a way of taking our rage at the system uh, out on one person who has transgressed in the same way. And also not forgetting like social media is this platform where thousands or tens and hundreds of thousands of people can descend upon one person, and each of us when we do that we are like one person writing one comment, right? But then the cumulative effect
Right.
of that on the person getting cancelled, I think is quite tremendous, right? Like I would say.
Right. Right. So yeah, so this is where, I mean, this is one of the, for me, one of the complexities of this cancel culture, right? So sometimes the issue and the frustrations are justified because of the particular issue, right? But then the person at the end of it may be, the punishment method may be um, disproportionate to that particular individual because it embodies our entire frustrations. Like, I mean, Ivan Lim didn't do anything to us, most of us personally,
Most
right?
of us, yeah.
Most of us. Okay, so there is a comment by Nurin. She says that it needs to start somewhere. I guess it needs to start somewhere. Question mark. The response to Ivan Lim was a signal to the elites that the public won't tolerate such people in office. I take that. I take that point. It was definitely a signal, and it was a signal sent and received. However, right, it wasn't. PM Lee did mention something that I thought had a lot of sense in it. He said that we cannot just be going on and having a trial by public opinion, right? I mean that it does make sense to some extent. To some extent, before I unpack that, right? However, his action, particularly, right, his action didn't seem like it was commensurate with his own words, right? Because if he felt that, he should continue to feel Ivan Lim, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, but basically what he's saying, oh, we shouldn't have this trial by public opinion, but I'm gonna cave into the trial by public opinion nonetheless, right?
Yeah.
So I guess the next question I have for you, and we can explore this further, right? Before that, I think Megan asked,
Something
in
about short
Singapore.
memory, right?
Yeah. In Singapore, do people really get cancelled because we have Singaporeans have short-term memories? I think. Okay, so maybe you don't get cancelled forever. I mean, and that's the other part as well that we need to talk about, right? How long should a person be cancelled for? But I think you cannot say that a person is not cancelled, right? Because when we may make fun of Ivan Lim and his family, using his family as a shield, and I think you are onto something there. But I'm sure his family was going through a torrid time during that time. I'm not saying that doesn't mean we shouldn't subject him to all of that. I'm just saying that it is what it is, right? The family will
Mm-hmm.
will go through that, right? So is it, for you, is it a reality enough, or is it just a myth? Is it exaggerated by people who are going against cancel culture, as in they're just using this as a rallying cry against wokeness and change, and basically because
Okay,
they don't
so
want to move a lot. Yeah, go
I
on.
think what is really interesting. So like recently, and I'm gonna go into like shifty territory because I'm gonna talk about like the racism that's happened recently, right? And so I've been just reading a lot, like what people have posted and reading the comments, and then a lot of it, of course, is very heartbreaking when people talk about their experiences of racism in Singapore. But what I've also noticed is that like minorities who speak out against like certain parts of it, they're like, "Hey, I don't think this is racist," or "I don't think this is particularly problematic, given the context." They then get also attacked by other minorities, and then like just recently, I saw someone say something like that, and then after a while, he just deleted
Can you
his
give an
whole
example? Can you give an example?
uh, okay, yeah, I think so recently there was a comment on, I think it was Wake Up Singapore or something, and there was this girl who gave the her lived experience of being called the Black One when she was the only person on the team who was Indian. And then this guy said something about he was in a football team where most of the guys were Indian or black. I can't quite remember, but dark, like brown people. And then when there are like Caucasians or when there are Chinese people in there, they just refer to the person as, hey, Chinese boy or something like that. And he's like, well, in this case, it might not be racist. It could just be a thing where because that's your outstanding feature in the group. So then, of course, people were like, why are you invalidating her experience and so on and so forth, right? What you feel is not representative of what she feels. And I think this is, I guess, like the part where it gets really dicey. Because, again, like another minority is being silenced, right? Of his experience or like how he feels. And I mean, to me, it's like, I can't step in there as a Chinese person and say anything. This has to, like, it would be so weird for me to say anything. But like as an observer, then it's a little bit strange and disconcerting. And, I don't know what is right or wrong in the way that society has to progress.
Right. Well, that's a lot. I didn't expect this to escalate to racism.
Yeah.
So early in the night.
So fast, right?
I can forget about Austria versus North Macedonia now. Okay, so
did you see the match yesterday where the guy got a heart
attack? I did. Yeah,
gosh.
so I was watching it with my son, unfortunately, so he was a bit
was he traumatized?
He was a bit traumatized. He was reminded of my father, whom he's really close to, because my father passed on because of a heart attack. So so he was in some distress. But anyway, so
sorry for
no, it's okay. Would you say it is okay? I'm assuming that both incidents happened in Singapore that you're talking about.
I think so.
Okay, so if both incidents happen in Singapore, do you think there is a difference between in a Chinese majority country and football team? And I'm asking a serious question, as in I may not know the answer as well. So do you think there's a difference between a Chinese majority team calling an Indian blackie or black one versus a Malay majority or Indian majority team calling a Chinese person the Chinese boy? Do you think that there would be a difference there? Because carry on.
Yeah, please go on first.
No, carry on. Yeah.
I think given how much discrimination there is against with colorism and skin tones, and of course the very casual racism that abounds in Singapore, one version is definitely more problematic than the other version, right?
Right. Yeah. But it doesn't mean that the other one is also not problematic, right? Even though I mean there may be gradations, but it doesn't mean that there is not a problem, right? So Z says reverse racism does not exist. When a minority race does that, it's prejudice. Well, I'm not sure whether I'm totally on board with that, because we have to first define racism, right? Because if you define racism just as a structure, then Z's statement is correct, right? But if you define racism as a broader thing, right, which includes prejudice, then I think you can say that there may be such a thing as reverse racism, or if you don't want to call it reverse racism from minorities towards majorities. And we know, because there are such incidents as well. Now, when we talk about Chinese privilege, for instance, right, I don't think anybody is seriously saying that the minorities are more inherently moral than the Chinese, right? It's just that, so because the minorities are minorities, by definition, there will be more of these instances, and more of these instances are normalized in a way that the other way around is not, right? So I think, and of course, for a period of time, there was a certain, I don't know whether well, you would remember, right? Maybe our younger audience would not remember. If you remember the Asian values when we were in secondary school and primary school, and at the front page of our exercise book, right, there's 5 values, right? community before self and all of that. And all of those were
Yeah.
Confucian values, right? Confucian values. So the goodness of society is defined in a particular way of Chineseness, right? So that's an added layer to the Chinese privilege that that doesn't exist for the other way around. Okay, so
Also,
reverse
like the
racism.
adoption of Chinese
Correct.
values, right?
Yeah,
Like
exactly,
the
exactly.
adoption of that. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So, all right. So, what would so you think cancel culture is real, but
I
it can be
think
exaggerated at times, or it can
I
go too
think
far at that.
people do tend to exaggerate some parts of it, which is not to say that like some parts that I am concerned about doesn't exist. So, for example, you mentioned that I think in your interview with Dr. Professor Sharon George, right? Like you said, like one of your students came to you in class and said that she had reservations about voicing her opinions because she was afraid of being judged,
Right.
right? And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm also an educator. I was an educator, and like hearing something like that concerns me because I have problems trying to get my students to speak up already in class, regardless of whether it's about how they think or how they want to approach a project. These things are already not natural to Singaporean kids. And we have a really extraordinarily high level of self-censorship,
Right.
that people don't even realize until, you kind of prod them or poke them and question them. And I think the classroom should be a place where ideas can be trashed out. And I'm like very pro free speech as well. And, even speech that offends you.
Yeah.
I think it has it. So for example, I was making a bunch of dating comics like a couple months back, and then some local men got really triggered and CSI'd
Because.
me because they thought I was making fun of local men in my comics.
Right.
And so what happened was they took my photos like online and put it in the forum, said all sorts of really, really shitty things.
Wow.
And yeah, so what happened was like some ladies DM'd me and said, "Hey, do you want to call the police on them?" And I think I could do that, but at the BBF is Unite TS. So I mean, I could do that, but at the same time, I think like anything you put out there on the internet will be criticized. And as long as nothing problematic happens, as in like they didn't dox me or my phone number or my house address, I'm very okay with people saying all sorts of things.
Right. Okay. So
Yeah.
what were they saying? So where do you draw that line? Right. And I think it can get to a
What
wider
were they
point. Right? What
saying?
were they
Can I
saying
say this
that
on the
point?
podcast?
I've never had any guest use vulgarities before, but okay, there's always a first time for everything. So. Carry on.
It was pretty
carry
bad.
on.
It was pretty bad.
Right.
I think they were
Just a
well,
sample.
okay, like
Just a sample.
just the regular nicer ones who are like, oh, she's so ugly. Like even if her dad is a millionaire and paid me to have dinner with her, I wouldn't accept. That was the nice one.
Wow.
And then on the other end of the scale, it says, people were saying something like, oh, she needs to have like an Angmo dick, the sanitized version, stuffed in her mouth and her ass and things like that. So like, I mean, it went pretty bad.
Yeah.
Right? So, but
They were-
and of course they were commenting on my face and like, how I looked.
Right. Okay. So, and you are, I mean, you are not okay with those comments, obviously, but you don't think they crossed the line that required state intervention. That's what you're saying.
For me personally, no.
Okay.
Because
but if somebody else in your situation, you can totally understand why they would.
Yeah, I can
report it to the
understand.
police. Right. So it's a personal preference.
Yeah, it's
okay.
my personal line is not like the general line that I recognize. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, you said a lot of really fascinating stuff that I think we can explore one by one, right? So, there is a point here that free speech can ignite hatred, right? So,
Yeah,
um,
for sure.
and I think we have to firstly understand what free speech is, and we need to understand the debates around free speech, because I think that is the heart of the debate on cancel culture is actually the heart of the debate about free speech, right? Where are the lines? And nobody, when they say they are pro free speech, says that there is no line. There is a line, right?
Yeah,
So
for sure.
everybody would say that when the moment you call for violence, that is the line that is crossed, and you need to take action against that, whatever sort of action, right? And even not just violence, right? There's all sort of defamation laws that even free societies accept, right? Then the question is, where are those lines specifically? Who gets to decide those lines? And
Yeah.
that is the part that really, really worries me, right? And the question is, free speech can ignite hatred? Well, I think that's the price you pay for free speech, right? That is, I think there are a lot of things that can ignite hatred. Are we going to ban something? Are we going to disallow something just because it can potentially ignite hatred, right? I'll give you an example, right? Probably the first part of our conversation today can ignite hatred towards Ivan Lim, right? Does that mean
No.
that? Right? So where
Ivan, I'm
exactly do
sorry.
we? Where exactly should we be drawing the line, right? And if you're gonna say anything meaningful, right, or you're gonna make a comment on any important issue, I think you are going to offend somebody at least. So should a person's personal offense be the line? Then otherwise, there's nothing that we can ever speak about.
Yeah.
What
Yeah, I
what do you
think
think?
Yeah, I think that is it, right? We cannot take the people who are the most sensitive and take that as the line. But at the same time, we can't take the line as the people who are like, hey man, you guys are like snowflakes and too woke, right? Like we can't take those people's lines as well. So I think it always has to be somewhere in the middle. But then I think the middle is always shifting. For
Yeah.
example, like in comedy, right? Like, and I love comedy and I like really effed up stuff,
So
you
who
know,
who
that
are your favorite comedians? Who are your favorite?
I love. Well, I mean, he's cancelled now, but I love Louis C.K. and I
Okay.
and
But he's cancelled for a different reason, right?
yeah, he's
But
cancelled for this. He got me
he's
too.
made yeah,
He
and
got me
he's made
too.
a comeback also. So I don't think we should
Yes.
be feeling
And
too
also
sorry for Louis
like
C.K. Yeah.
George Carlin,
Okay.
people
So
like
that's
that.
right. Oh,
And
that's really
the
old
stuff.
school stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'm of that age, you know. I'm not
Right.
young.
Yeah. Okay.
But like, so some of the things that George Carlin said probably would be very problematic now, right? People would say that
For
he's
sure.
fat phobic,
100%.
you know, he
100%.
makes fun of everything. So like the lines are shifting.
Right. And I'm also not sure whether comedy is the area that we should be drawing lines.
Yes.
Yeah, and
So
I'm very worried about sorry, carry on. Yeah.
yeah, so like with the recent case, right, with the what's her the guy who pretended to be a Chinese woman and was like making tweets about
Yeah,
making
Sharon
like
Liu.
tweets.
Yeah,
Sharon Liu,
Sharon Liu.
yeah. Like
Yeah.
so that is also comedy, right? And in a way, I mean, if we don't want
Yeah,
to
so
attribute like malicious intent to this guy,
yeah. So Alfian, I think, wrote quite an interesting piece on that.
yeah,
I
he
think you
did.
saw that. Yeah. So I mean, it definitely. I mean, it was food for thought for me, at least, when he shared that, right? So this is my personal thought on this, and I wanted to bounce this idea off you, right? So I do think, firstly, right, people who have been calling a lot of times, people who they are defining cancel culture, canceling so broadly such that it has no meaning. So I saw this post. By Bertha Hansen before, who'll be my guest in a couple of days, and she was
Yeah, I'm
talking
looking
about.
forward to that one.
I am too. So and this post is something that I will be asking her on. So she was posting about how we shouldn't use Chinese privilege, but majority privilege, and so on. And there were a lot of people who were criticizing her for it. And then I saw some comments who were people who were defending her. And then one of them said, "Oh, look at this. These people claim to be pro free speech, but they are trying to cancel her." No, Disagreeing with someone is not trying to cancel you. Calling a person out is not trying to cancel you. What I would say is cancelling is when they are actively saying that Bertha Hansen shouldn't be a professor at NUS. And they write into NUS and then say, oh, that is cancelling. And I would be very against that. I think I would be completely against that. Even for people I disagree with, that Irvin mentioned, I will not mention their names, but Irvin mentioned a couple of names in the comments, that even these people, I do not want them to not exist in the public sphere for a few reasons, right? Because you cannot be free speech, but then for free speech, but then you're against it when you don't like it. Then you're not for free speech.
Exactly.
You're just for speech that you like, right? When you are, you know, the ACLU, right? So this pro-free speech organization, right? In the States, right? But also recently they have, I think, been compromised because of Trump derangement syndrome. But anyway, so when neo-Nazis, the KKK, I think, or neo-Nazis were planning a march in New York when Giuliani was the mayor, they were for it, you know, they were for that march, even though they hated the KKK and the neo-Nazis. And one of the people that was supporting them was Reverend Al Sharpton. You know, he's a black civil rights activist, but he is saying that the KKK should have a right to march, because if you allow the mayor to cancel that march, believe me, he said, basically, it's going to be used against us the next time. The same power is going to be used against black rights activists, for instance, right? So you don't have to. I mean, okay, the KKK is an extreme example. It won't happen in Singapore, right? In that case, but I'm saying
we
people
can't even
who
march
disagree,
outside of Hong Lim Park.
right? For the environment, right? Never mind for anything else, right? So I don't think people should be too eager to say, oh, this person, he doesn't like it. And then one of the things that, you know, the couple of names that were mentioned, some of their detractors would say, oh, they are hurting real people. Yeah, but any important speech involves real people, right? So, so there is no policy that doesn't involve real people, right? Otherwise, it's a meaningless policy if it's not going to have an impact on real people, right? So, I think,
actually,
carry on, Anngee. Yeah.
Whatever policy that is passed would have impact or negative impact on some people. It just depends on like who are those people,
for sure,
right?
Exactly. It will affect people. So I'm very worried when we are too eager to say that people should be deplatformed, right? Which is, I think, the apex of cancel culture. So unless a crime has been committed, then that's completely different. Then the legal system should take care of that. But I'm all for calling out. I'm all for calling out people, especially in positions of power, because you must understand that cancel culture is also a weapon of the weak, right? It's a weapon of the ordinary people against, especially important people, against elite. So even though I am in principle uncomfortable with the cancellation of Ivan Lim, right? But I think it's something I wouldn't lose sleep over, because it's a message against an elite, right? So, but if you're punching down, if you're canceling people where it's an easy target, somebody on social media says something, and you know, sometimes we say things that are more inelegant. Sometimes it does come from a place of prejudice, but sometimes it comes from ignorance or clumsiness. And at times the lines are clear, right? This one is clearly prejudiced and racist and so on. Other times, you're not so sure. And I think because cancel culture is ultimately about accountability. So how do you reconcile making cancel culture really about accountability and not about canceling? I think the space for the line, or the space for reconciliation, lies in allowing for growth and allowing for people to say, you know, let's have if that person apologizes, then okay, and you see it as a sincere apology, not I'm sorry if you are offended, right? Which is a rubbish apology, or
which is
I'm
what
sorry
most
if
people
I
do.
have hurt you, which is what most people do, because I think I can see right through an insincere apology, right? When you say, oh, I'm sorry. So when you slap a person, you are not sorry that the person got hurt. You are sorry for the slap. right?
It's
You
like
know
that
what's
recent case of Circle's Life where they
that was
posted a
exactly
really
what I was gonna
cringe,
say.
and then
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
second one was also cringe, and then the
Cringe.
third one was like, okay,
Oh, you think the
maybe.
third one was? I thought the third one was a straight up apology. You didn't like
I
it?
think
You
the
didn't
third
like it?
one was where they actually got a PR specialist to step in, and the PR specialist was like, "This is why you should pay professionals money to do this."
Right. So you see,
Yeah,
I don't have a problem with that, you see. I don't have a problem. I don't care if your
true.
intention is sincere because I cannot judge intentions. I literally cannot. And we don't have the tools to judge intentions,
So
right?
the other
But we
question
can,
that I
yeah,
have for you is that like people are asking for them to take down the first two, right? Because they say like, why are you leaving the first two up? And then Circle of Life said something like, oh, it's for about accountability. We want our past mistakes to be
yeah,
there.
yeah.
But then of course people are like, it hurts. It hurts us. Take it down. Like, what are your thoughts? Like,
I don't have a problem with them keeping that up as long as the third post is also up. I don't have a
right.
problem with that. So we can see that this is indeed their mistake. So I personally wouldn't have a problem with that. I think the first one was it can only be done by a person of privilege, right? That kind
Yeah.
of that kind of post,
Sure.
right? Can
Yeah.
and look at me, I'm so anti-racist, I'm so
I'm so
multiracial,
woke.
right? I'm so woke and I'm
I
so
want to earn woke
multiracial.
money.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
also we must always be careful. Don't be too happy to celebrate corporate brands,
Yes.
especially when they engage in performative wokeness. Don't be too happy to do that because ultimately what they are interested in the dollars, right? Don't be too uh, uh, don't rush, don't be too quick to celebrate politicians also, right? Because for their wokeness, because ultimately they are interested in our votes as they should be, right? Unless they have a proven track record over a long period of time, or unless they're Nicole Seah, then that's different, right?
Oh, I
Uh,
see you slipped that right in. Huh?
so you wouldn't notice. Yeah. But
Oh, I
other than that,
noticed.
we should always have a healthy skepticism of these kinds of performative wokeness. Sorry, I interrupted you. You wanted to say something.
I forgot because it's.
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't realize like it's such a challenge to do IG live, talk to someone, and then also read comments.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
It's an amazing skill that you have, Walid.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm still getting the hang of it. Yeah. So
yeah,
I don't know whether
but
you
I
saw
think
my session with Megan the other day.
yeah,
That
I
was
did.
good
I
training.
saw like
That was
the
good
oh my
training.
gosh, Megan, you're a
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
very very brave
She's
person.
she's a
I
she's
applaud
she's a
you for it.
superstar. She is. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
but going back to your like not celebrating brands, I always found it really strange that when people insist that brands have to adopt like cultural things. I mean, why do you insist, for example, that let me think, LV or something has to be woke when you can go spend your money on a brand that is already woke, woke from the
right,
inside out, right?
right, right,
It's
right,
really strange.
right. Yeah. And why would you expect? I guess in some ways also, right? So this is a bit of a tangent, but I think it's still related. So one of the things that the left in America, the political elites amongst the left, right? One of the ways they want to get around their elitism, and instead of being economically populist, right, they engage in cultural populism, which is, and some ways that's fine, right? But uh, they are reluctant, for instance, to solve economic problems, to take on the corporate entities, right? But then they signal through this to get the neoliberal left on their side, basically, right? So those kinds of people, right?
Are
So
they
there is a
easily
question.
bamboozled?
Well, I think some people are easily bamboozled, and that's what we shouldn't be, right? We shouldn't be.
Yeah.
We should always be critical of. I saw this. I think when you were over at my place, we talked about this, right, with Audrey as well, where
Yeah.
the US, the meme with the US plane that was bombing people, and then they had a rainbow flag, right?
Oh yeah.
So the only difference is now, oh, you see, we are woke now, we are extra woke, but we're still killing people, right?
We're
So,
bombing in the name
so
of wokeness.
yeah, we are bombing in the name of wokeness, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so there is a point that by I like trades. So sorry, I don't know who you are, but I like Train said that, but they are only apologetic of the backlash because of the backlash. And my response to that is, this one is talking about Circles SG. Is that what Circles Life or what? What is it called?
Circles Life, I think.
Circles Life. Yeah. So, okay. So what if they are apologetic only because of that? We got them to be apologetic through our activism, right? And as I said, we do not know intentions, but what we can do is create actions and institutions to circumscribe actions, right? And ensure that moving forward, they will not do the same thing. I don't care what's in their heart. Right? I care if they do the right thing, even if their intentions are not correct. Sorry, carry on. Yeah, Anngee.
Corporations have no hearts.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't understand when people say they are only apologetic because of the backlash. Yes,
That's
and
what you
that's
want
what
them
we
to
must.
be, I guess. Yeah.
That's what we want them to be, right? That's what we want them to be, and that's also the power of public opinion, right? Which sometimes we take for granted, right? So yes, I do see how cancel culture can be consequence culture, but I think where I would draw the line is not to make that person disappear the very first time, right? We must allow room for growth. And also, I would say this to the people who grew up on social media, right? Which you and I didn't, right? And
Thank
thankfully we
God.
didn't.
Yeah.
Thankfully we didn't, right?
Yeah, super thankfully.
Thankfully we didn't, right? People who grew up on social media, right? How far back should you go?
This
How
is
far back
really,
should you?
really scary to me because when I used to teach like in a polytechnic, and of course my students were like 17 to 20, right? And imagine having like a lot of your stupid teenage years documented online and also like potentially there forever for anyone to look back on,
Right,
and then like,
right.
I mean, the things that I thought 2 years ago are not the things that I'm thinking right
Absolutely.
now. And I
Absolutely.
have said some
Absolutely.
like really stupid things that would get me cancelled right now
For
if someone
sure.
wants to dig it. And
For sure,
you
yeah.
know, and the thing is, I think like so one thing that happened, I think last year or 2 years ago, I can't. Time is weird now. I can't remember what happened when, but there was I think a teenager who wore like a Nazi patch out, and then there was a huge outcry. And this was a moment where I thought I would get cancelled, and I defended the kid because I said, hey, this is a kid. I don't think people should put his photo up on social media. There's a reason why the law states that we don't reveal names so that teenagers cannot be identified, right?
Right.
Because
Right.
you don't want to impact their future. And then, of course, a lot of people, like really, really angry people, like messaged me. And I said, you know what? Like, this is something that we have to consider. Like, you know, when you see a kid misbehaving, you have to recognize that people, you know, like our brains only mature at 20 something or, you know,
Yeah.
late 20s. And these
At best.
kids,
At
at
best.
best, some people never mature, right?
Yeah, some
And
people are still maturing, right?
And so, like,
Yeah.
so when I did that, I was like completely prepared to get cancelled because it
Right.
is very problematic. But then I also have taught students where they told me, hey, Hitler is so cool. And then, of course, I asked them, why do you think Hitler is cool? They show me like a comic, a Japanese manga, where Hitler is playing mahjong with like Buddha and like several other characters. And this is all the exposure they have had to Hitler, because we don't really teach European history in Singapore, you know, and most kids here, they don't go off on their own and learn. And I think the most
Unless you do
important,
it as an examinable subject
yeah,
at Sec 3,
exactly.
right? Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
and the most important part is that we didn't grow up with a cultural awareness of the Nazi insignia and what it means. If you went out in Europe and you wore it, you would be punched in the street.
For
You
sure,
know, people will
100%.
scold you and
100%.
scream at you. In Singapore, people would be like, "Is that like a Buddhist symbol?"
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know.
Probably
So
that it
it's
was
a very
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, so
it's a very big
so
difference.
the part on the Hitler the Hitler reaction by the kids, I mean that's worrying if our kids actually do not know what Hitler did and who he is. That's really I mean I don't know what it's an indictment of, but it's definitely an indictment of something.
Our
Not the
educational
part
system.
yeah, and maybe parenting and all sorts of things, right? So the other thing is and this is a part where I think I'm gonna, together with you, we are gonna lose some followers. Right? I'm actually,
Bye-bye.
I'm actually with you. I don't think that kid should have been subjected to the amount of hate that that person got. Of course, I mean, I would need more details, right?
Yeah.
What that person actually
I mean,
thinks
if
and
someone wants to go
who
up to
that
him
person
and
has done
scold
that
him,
before.
yeah, if someone on the street wants to scold him and punch him, I think I have no problems
Oh,
because he should learn.
punch as well.
Yeah,
You
I
think
mean,
that?
yeah,
Oh, okay,
he should learn like the consequence of wearing it, but
right.
having it on the internet forever, I don't agree
Yeah,
with that. Yeah.
yeah. So I don't. I mean, I wouldn't want that person to be punched, but I think that person should be scolded. I mean, by people who saw it, should be educated definitely. But also, it seems like that is such an easy target for us to go after, right? A teenager with. So this is a part
Yeah.
about cancel culture that I feel like, I always, and I think you and I had a conversation off air at least about performative activism, right? I
Yes.
always feel like uh, performative activism means superficial activism, right? And one of the ways to see that, one of the ways to really identify that, is when you are always punching down and not punching up, right? When there is a cause that is easy for you to jump on. Now, just because the cause is easy to jump on doesn't mean it's not the right cause. It could very well be the right cause. But if you're only jumping on those causes, but you're never speaking up when there is something at stake, then it's very difficult for me to respect you as an activist, right? What do you think about that?
Um. Well, yes, I agree. I also am very. I think there is also that sort of pressure nowadays to always speak up about everything. Um, and so
Right.
it's
I get what
very
you're saying.
easy to, yeah, like it's very easy to just reshare something and be like, hey, I'm against this.
Yeah.
But like on my part, I always, like, for example, with the Israel Palestine issue recently, I mean, I know very little about it, so I didn't want to like be sharing resources and stuff
For sure. For
because
sure. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have not done my research. And
Yeah. Sure.
so like, whereas sometimes I see people like my own friends, right, who are completely politically unaware, sharing resources about politics or whatever's trending at the moment, and then sometimes you have conversations with them and you realize that they don't know anything beyond like 10 IG squares.
Right.
And then I wonder, like, is there a point to it besides
Well,
amplifying?
there is a point, right? I think they wanna show that they belong and they wanna show that they are woke. Although I wouldn't be too worried about that if I think that is the first step towards something. But if that's the last step, then I'll be very, very worried, right? So I saw, and this was, I mean, I'm quite new to Instagram, maybe 1.5 years, I can't remember, but around there. And during the Black Lives Matter, I saw so
Yes.
many people whom I know, have
Yeah.
personally made even racist comments to me, and they were they
You're
were
like, whoa,
sharing they were sharing things
suddenly
as if they
become
were
woke, yeah?
exactly suddenly anti-racist and come on. I mean, I know what you're doing. I know what you're doing. I know you are trying to show to the crowd, and it's not as if I'm discounting the value of learning. If you have learned, fine, but from my subsequent interactions with you also, I know that you haven't learned.
I
Right?
think like
It's just that it's very easy to sorry to interrupt. It's just very
okay.
easy to think that those people are racist. How can I be racist? I have an Indian friend, and I know the difference between Tamil and Malayali, right? How can I be racist? I'm not
I
that
eat
person.
thosai every
Is that
day.
yeah. I eat thosai. I eat prata, my Malay neighbor, I say Selamat Hari Raya to him. So it's easy to jump on the bandwagon, but it's very difficult to do some self-reflection.
I think the other
And
thing, yeah. Yeah, sorry,
sorry,
please go
Sean
on.
also said amplifying has a value too, which I agree. Amplifying does have a value. Although I would say where I would say that person uh, not something is doing something that I probably wouldn't respect is when they are not they are being a bit hypocritical. Okay, so I'll give another example, right? The Stop Asian Hate, for instance, right? I mean, and I think Audrey was one who solicited comments on this, and my DM to her was, by itself, I think that's not a problem. I think that's a good message to have.
But I would like to see that person do it when there is something at stake. And that's when it's difficult to do it in Singapore, for instance, right? Then I would say, okay, then, because it's not, you don't have to be an expert on everything, right? Just because you speak on racism doesn't mean you must speak on the Israeli-Palestinian issue, right? But if you're going to speak about racism in America as a Singaporean, I think you should be talking about racism in Singapore as a Singaporean. It's the same issue, right? So that's where I would try to identify whether this person is jumping on the bandwagon, amplifying, or just being self-serving, right? Yeah. So sorry,
like,
any thoughts on that? Yeah.
Yeah, like going back to the BLM, right? So what was happening besides people doing the black square thing, which a lot of people have mentioned, is also the fact that we were sharing, like people were sharing a lot of slogans like defund the police, right? Which are very big, broad terms. And then everyone was shouting them, but no one actually knew what the term meant. So what happened after the BLM protests is that some states did defund the police, right? And I was reading an article recently. I mean, this is 1 year after the Black Lives Matter movement. It's still going on in the US, but in Singapore, like no one hardly gives a shit about it, right? Like no one's posting about it anymore because it's not trending.
Yeah.
But what is really interesting is that like the states, some of the states where the police got defunded because of the outcry and the protests, the homicide rate went up. And because of the hate towards police people, a lot of police also like resigned. And then when you have low funding and like police resigning, like cases of crime don't get solved. And so like what happened was that they have refunded them.
So I think this is an important point that maybe it may be a point of slight disagreement. So maybe we can explore this, right? Because I am on the AOC Bernie Sanders side, right? So I'm on that side. So that's my kind of politics, right? So I know when AOC is talking about defunding the police, right? There is a specific meaning that AOC understands to it, and maybe people who are using the slogan may have different meanings, which is fine. But when, let's say that's true, right? So let's say there are policemen, policewomen who resign because of criticisms towards the police force, right? Then shouldn't the policemen and policewomen be angry at the policemen and policewomen who are carrying out violence rather than the protesters against the said violence, right? So I'm not sure whether it's the slogan defund the police and the protesters that should be blamed, or rather it should be the people who were doing it who are actually killing people based on, and it's not that they go out of their way to kill people because they are black, right? Because that's not how racism works.
Yeah, it's not.
There are very few racists like that. There are, but there are very few. And the other,
they are like psychopaths.
The other layer, right, they are psychopaths, right? The other layer is when I see a black person, right, suddenly my senses are heightened, right? As opposed to when I see and I know this because I knew of this Singaporean who whenever he or she was in London, right, he or she studied there, this person said that whenever a black person is in the same vicinity as him or her, he or she would hold her wallet or purse closely, right? And it said it's better to be safe than sorry, right? No, that's racist. That's absolutely racist, right? Yeah. Now, you may justify it intellectually by saying, oh, but that's not what I mean. I like black people. I hang out with black folks. But you are a racist. And that's the kind of racism that I think is more prevalent, right? Where it's a subconscious, subtle, and then it can be easily intellectualized. Because if we think of racism just as I hate you because you are of a different race, then it's very easy to not confront our biases, I think. What do you think about that?
So just to go back to the defund the police, I just want to like clarify that I'm totally on the side of defunding the police. If it means channeling the money towards education and rehabilitation, I fully support that. But I think what happens is that like recently I watched a YouTube video where Yuval Harari was talking about how revolutions that have very sudden changes tend to not go very well. It's the ones where they have gradual change that works better, because in the meantime, like where you suddenly lose power, for example, or resources or something, right? And there would be a period of chaos, and this is the period where people suffer because you have not channeled enough resources into education, and for a long enough time to see the effects of it before you defund the police. So like this period of chaos is where like the trouble lies, because what happens is that then there'll be backlash and people will say something like, hey, you see, this is what happens when defunding the police happens, right? So I think like there is that, like, I mean, as a person who puts out content, I think I want to impact it in the most efficient way possible. And like, so now I question the like sudden like changes to systems before like everything else, all the other parts can slot into place.
Right. What I would say is, if we were to make parallels to what has been going on in Singapore, Anngee, right? How sudden is sudden and how gradual is gradual, right? So, because the impression I get, I don't know whether you know the Taobao editorial in a few days ago that's saying, blaming the pandemic basically for the increase in racism, and also talking about how it's the usage of Chinese privilege that has actually contributed to this and stuff, right? So, and for them, right? And if you notice, a lot of people, what they're saying, oh, I'm surprised by this. Has the pandemic made people more racist? What are you surprised about? This is a reality, right? You know, when I was growing up, this was what my uncles and my parents were talking about all the time, right? I mean, they always spoke about racism with a lot of resentment, you know. So this is a reality for me since I was a young boy, you know. So it's not as if it's new to you. It's new to not you, Anngee. It's new to you, the people, people behind that editorial, because you were not exposed to it, and you think it is sudden, but it's not. For us, it's gradual. I mean, it's going on all this while, right? So, what is sudden to whom and gradual to whom? Again, that's what I will ask you. Yeah.
I would say, like, even for me, it was a surprise that it turned like physically violent. That really shocked me, because in Singapore, like, I mean, we are a very low crime country. You know, people don't just punch each other on the street for no reason.
Because we are scared of the state, right? We're scared of the state.
Because we all know that racial crimes carry like a very heavy sentence.
For sure.
Also, and so this, like, the part where like people actually transcended the fear of the state to carry out like
to be
racially, to be that. So that was like, I guess, shocking to me, and also because. I think because we venerate old people, right? Because we're Asian, for like a young person to punch like an old lady, that is like a whole other level of crazy, because you have to really hate somebody to attack like an old person, you know?
Right.
I mean, that's not an excuse for anything, of course, but I think it's really, there's a visceral shock.
Right, for sure. So I guess maybe the intensity and the graphic nature of these things, maybe that's like, surprising. Yeah, sorry.
I think the other thing is also like just the language barrier. I showed my dad the video of the Indian guy who got yelled at by the lecturer from, was it Nanyang Poly?
Yeah.
Or Nanyang Poly. And my dad was like, he said, why is he praying to the woman? And he thought praying meant like, you know, prayers, like.
Yeah.
And I was trying to explain to him what praying meant, and I like the language. So a lot of this is not fully translatable, and of course the discourse that we are having online right now, a lot of the people of the older generation have no access to, because they don't read English.
Sure.
And the Chinese papers don't translate this at all.
Absolutely. Yeah. So this is the other thing, right? That I wanted to say. It's from Nanyang Poly, by the way. So I don't want.
Sorry, Nanyang Poly. Don't get Prof.
I don't want us to. Yeah. to get a defamation suit or anything from NYP. So the older generation thing, I think definitely there's that. There's definitely that, and you know, when people talk about the hurt that the Chinese educated have gone through. And that's true as well, that we cannot deny, and it's a part of our history that we need to that is often glossed over, right? Often glossed
Yeah.
over, which I think you're doing a good job of identifying through your podcast. And at the same time, right, even when we talk about the older generation, it's not monolithic. As I said, the older generation, right, from my family, right, are acutely aware of the realities of race and racism in Singapore. They are very aware. They know about it. They may not use the term Chinese privilege. They may not express it in fluffy academic language or woke language that many of us do, but they understand it perfectly well. They
Yeah.
understand, and when they see, they absolutely know it.
You don't need
Absolutely know it.
fancy
They can.
language to know
You don't need it.
discrimination.
You don't need. You
Yeah.
can smell this from far away, right?
Yeah.
So I definitely take that point. But what I would say is the older generation is not monolithic as well. So we've gone for 1 hour. So maybe we
Yeah.
can wrap up
it
in
up.
about 5-10
Sure.
minutes. Yeah. So
Sure.
so what would you say? What is the biggest thing that concerns you about cancel culture?
I worry that there would be like just one way of talking or thinking, and we've already had that, for a very long time.
In Singapore.
So
Okay.
yeah, in Singapore,
Right.
I don't want there to be like more policing of the people who are, who have different ideas and thoughts. For like case in point, what happened to me one time, I think I followed regardless.sg, and I think they're like a conservative IG account or something that was controversial because they posted something that was anti trans, was transphobic or something. I can't remember. And then I got like a bunch of DMs asking me, hey, why, like just complete random strangers, why are you following that account?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I
Really?
thought,
Wow.
yeah. And I
Wow.
thought to myself, like, even my dad doesn't tell me what to read and what not to read, right? Like, why is a random stranger thinking that they are entitled to ask me?
No, and what I mean, so we are not allowed to follow people that we disagree with. So should we just unfollow people that have completely different views or even bigoted views to us? I mean,
I have no idea.
We'll be safe in our own bubble, that not knowing that these bigoted opinions exist, or I don't know.
Yeah, I have no idea, because like a lot of my work is actually refuting people on the other side, what they say,
For sure.
and then I come up
For
with
sure.
something to say, hey, what you're saying is really dumb. And for that to happen, I need to know what the other side is talking about and thinking about, right? And even if I don't use it in my work, like why is it wrong to follow someone that you don't agree with? Like I'm not validating them or anything. It's just really weird. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very weird. It's very weird. And okay, so I think that is an excellent point. I think that's a worry of cancel culture. And the other thing is, I think it will lead to more self-censorship. And this self-censorship is not the traditional one where we are afraid of the state and then we self-censor, but this one we're afraid of public opinion, or not, and it's not public opinion per se, right? It's public opinion within our own circles, right? So a conservative at university may not feel that they have space to speak out or speak openly, right? And that by itself, for me, is already a worry. And then another worry is, if they cannot express their opinions that way, they will express their opinions another way, right? No, there are many reasons for the rise of the far right and Donald Trump in the States, the far right in Europe, right? There are many reasons, right? And I think economic reasons would be at the top of the list. But I think culturally as well, there is something to that where they feel like, just because I'm a white man, I cannot say things. Now, you may think it's not true, and in a lot of instances that's not true, but that's what a lot of people are feeling. And that's how they feel in certain spaces. And I think you cannot just dismiss that. And we cannot dismiss the lived experiences of people and perceptions of minorities. We cannot dismiss the lived experiences and perceptions of the majority as well, right? That doesn't mean it's right. That doesn't mean either opinion is right or the perception is right. But we cannot just immediately discount them. And I worry that if we go for, and we attempt to crucify a person, right, without any understanding of gradations of mistakes, I fear that we may have that culture ingrained in Singaporeans, right? It's almost as if you have to go from 0 to 100 immediately for every mistake.
I think like
And
we had this chat where we were talking about like how people don't understand why Mexicans or Asians or Chinese or like black people would vote for Trump. And so like then these people who are minorities in the US get branded as race traitors. And I
right.
think that is also really like a scary thing to see happen in the US.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it's also a bit condescending to minorities, right? Thinking that, oh, the only way I need to get the minority vote is just put a minority out there as a candidate, right? You know, Kamala Harris, right, didn't get the black vote during the
Yeah.
primaries, right? Older blacks voted for Biden, younger blacks voted for Bernie, right? And yet you see intellectuals in America and in Singapore. I remember Professor Tommy Koh, somebody whom I really respect, whom I consider the conscience of Singapore. But he wrote a Facebook post saying that Kamala Harris is going to get the younger voters because she's young, and she's going to get the black voters because she's black. There is such a condescending and patronizing view of. It's an elitist view. It's almost a neoliberal view of how the world works. Is an elitist and patronizing view of how the world works, right?
I'm also
Okay,
gonna
I
say
want
like at this point that
carry on.
like
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton didn't lose to Trump because she was a woman.
Well, I think it's one
Yeah.
of the reasons, but
Yeah,
it's not
it's
the main
one of
reason.
it's not the main
It's
reason.
not the main
They
reason.
like to
Yeah,
say like
she
it's the
lost.
main reason.
Absolutely, yeah. I
Yeah.
think she lost because I mean she was a terrible candidate, right? She wasn't. I don't
Super.
think she's. I think she's a terrible candidate as in terms of selling her policies, in terms of not going to the swing states in the final, and in
And
terms
if
of
you look at
just
her history,
misreading the ground. Absolutely. I mean, she's still way better than Trump, right? For
of
me, right?
course,
I would vote for her
for sure.
or if it was against Trump, but it's not as if she was a liberator that a lot
Yeah.
of people were saying that she was, right? So so any final thoughts from you, Anngee, especially for the younger audience, right? So what are your final thoughts? I won't want to say advice because that is patronizing
final
as well.
thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Final thoughts. Yeah. Final thoughts.
I think it's very important to think about like think through before you share stuff. For example, I think if you know nothing of a of a movement or something like that, it might be good for you to like research it first, and then instead of posting a clearly biased viewpoint, you might want to post, for example, the articles that you read or like the facts that you've read on, so other people can get like a non-biased point of view first. I think that is important to me.
Right. Okay. Absolutely. And my final thought is somebody said we about the safe space and how ironic it is that people are using safe space to insulate them from bad influences. What I would say is we should have safe spaces for ideas and not safe spaces from ideas. Even if they are terrible ideas, we should be able to engage with them and refute them and demolish them, right? Rather than be insulated from them, unfollow them, and then think, okay, I unfollow some people as well if I think they are irritating. So I think if they are if they are irritating and I think they don't have enough of a following for me to bother about them, so I just unfollow them, right, for my emotional well-being, right? But I mean, some of the people that were mentioned, people who I absolutely disagree with 90% of the time, right? But because their ideas are important, not their ideas are important, is that they are important personalities. So their
That's safe
ideas
right
are
there.
magnified. Their ideas are magnified. I have to follow them and to know what. And the fact that they consistently get hundreds and even thousands of likes shows that a lot of society thinks like them, and we cannot just ignore them. And it's true. If I unfollow you, right, because I follow about 2,000 plus people, if I unfollow you, then there's really, for me, I am insulting you, right? Because I am usually quite open of even my tolerance and threshold for ridiculousness is quite high.
Can you name someone you unfollowed?
No, I don't want to name, but there have been a few. Yeah, when I say, "Oh my
Okay.
God," when I expected so much more from you, but yeah. So yeah, I have unfollowed
Okay.
people before. So Anngee, thank you so much. This is the longest episode I've had
Really?
so far. Yeah.
Oh
In
my
terms of
gosh.
one episode, I think Megan's
Yeah,
one we
yeah.
did two sections of 1 hour. Yeah, but yeah. So this one is for the single one. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you
I've
for
I've
asking me on.
enjoyed this conversation so much. Yes. So Teh Tarik in real life soon. Okay.
Yes, please. We are like
Okay.
very close to each other.
Yeah. We live just
Yeah.
across each other, although we never
It's
bump into each
hilarious.
other. Yeah. Okay.
And then
Okay.
now it's for me to
Yeah.
like invite you on to the Longkang Kitties for the
More
Longkang
than
stories.
happy. So I
Yes,
assume
gotta
there'll
hold
be
it
a
to
lot
it.
of. Okay, there's a lot of vulgarities there, right? That I
A
won't
lot.
partake in.
Like feel free to like
But
say
no,
whatever
I
you
won't.
want.
But you can.
Let
You
loose.
can.
Everything that you wanted to
it's
say but
it's
stored
less.
inside of you, feel free. Just let it out. Let it go.
Angie, society has always functioned right by everyone not articulating what they think all the time. Right.
Yeah.
So even
Yeah.
for those who are very pro free speech, right, you must
Yeah.
understand there are some things that you
Sure.
sometimes yeah.
It's okay, Walid. It's all right. Don't worry about it. No one will cancel
Yeah.
you on the Longkang Kitties.
Okay. I hope so. Okay. So I hope you don't lose followers after this. All right. Okay.
Same.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
everyone.
See
Okay.
you
Good night.
soon.
Good night. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.